Visit from a Vampire. Part 6. Ethan tapped away at his keyboard, the glow from the monitor casting shadows across his small apartment. He was used to scanning the police system for criminals, but tonight was different. His stomach churned as he scrolled through the reports of mutilated bodies, campers found in the nearby woods, each one more disturbing than the last. The police suspected a serial killer, but the sheer brutality of the attacks unsettled him. He swallowed hard and leaned back in his chair, waiting for Lily. They had planned to meet tonight anyway, so he could give her the phone he'd set up for her. He couldn't wait to show her the reports to stop this thing together. He glanced at the cheap phone he bought from work, smiling slightly at the memory of Lily reluctantly agreeing to use it. She always resisted new technology, brushing it off as unnecessary for someone like her. "I don't need your gadgets, Ethan," she had teased last time. But after some convincing, she'd caved, asking him to set it up because, as she put it, she was hopeless with these things. Just as he finished his ramen, there was a soft knock at his window. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He moved to open it, already knowing who it was. Lily stepped inside, her long black hair slightly tousled by the night breeze. She was dressed casually as always, her petite frame hidden under a light jacket. Despite her ancient nature, she still managed to blend in with the modern world, at least in appearance. "Do you have my phone?" she asked immediately, raising an eyebrow. Ethan smiled and handed her the device. "It's all set up. I even downloaded a few apps you might find useful." She took the phone, inspecting it with mild interest. "What do I do with this again? Call you when I want to feed on thugs?" He chuckled. "Something like that. But really, Lily, if you want to live in the present world, you need to get used to technology. It'll make things easier." She rolled her eyes, fumbling with the phone. "Stop treating me like your grandma, will you?" Ethan smirked. "Well, stop acting like one, and I won't have to. Come on, Grandma, take a selfie of us." She gave him a playful glare, but then her expression softened as she tried pressing a few buttons. "Okay, so how do I—" "Wait, what's a selfie?" Ethan stifled a laugh. "Never mind, I'll show you later, but first I need to show you something. Something bad." He pulled up the police reports, and Lily's teasing demeanour vanished the moment she saw the images. The mutilated bodies of campers filled the screen, limbs torn apart, faces twisted in agony. Her dark eyes flickered with recognition. "There's a grotesque on the loose," she muttered. "A grotesque?" Ethan frowned. "What's that?" Lily turned to him, her tone grave. "A vampire that's gone too long without feeding. They lose their minds, become monsters, mindless creatures that feed endlessly, but no amount of blood can return them to what they were. They're dangerous, even to other vampires." Ethan's stomach dropped. "So, it's not just a serial killer?" "No," she said softly. "It's far worse." He took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. "We have to stop it." Lily's eyes were fixed on the screen. "The campsite. It's not far. I'll go there." Ethan quickly stepped in. "Let's go together. I can drive." Lily hesitated, glancing at him. "I can be there in seconds." "Yeah, but I want to help. We're a team, right?" Ethan gave her a determined look. She sighed, clearly weighing the options, then reluctantly nodded. "Fine, but don't expect me to enjoy the slow ride." The drive to the campsite was quiet at first. Ethan kept glancing over at Lily, who was staring out the window, seemingly lost in thought. After a few minutes, he broke the silence. "So, do you ever miss the past? Like, what was life like for you back then?" Lily's lips curled into a mischievous smile. "Ah, the good old days, when plagues were rampant and people died of the flu. Great times." He laughed, shaking his head. "No, seriously, I know you must have seen a lot." Her smile faded slightly, and for a moment she was quiet. "I've seen empires rise and fall, Ethan. Seen friends die, enemies grow stronger. The past is just that, the past." He could tell there was more Lily wasn't saying, but he decided not to push her. Instead, he tried to lighten the mood. You know, this whole vampire thing makes me think, maybe I should have asked you for help with my love life. That girl I was chasing for years? She ended up with someone else. Lily glanced at him, smirking. You should have just bitten her. Problem solved. Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. Yeah, sure. Because that wouldn't have been creepy at all. Lily's smirk widened as she gave him a teasing look. You're really asking me for love advice? You do realize I'm not exactly in your age group, right? I think I stopped giving dating tips about 300 years ago. Ethan grinned. Right, I forgot. You probably suggested duels at sunrise back then. They laughed together, and the tension that had built since seeing the mutilated bodies eased, if only for a moment. They soon arrived at the crime scene, an empty campsite now marked off by police tape. The nearby forest loomed dark and foreboding, as if hiding the monster within. Ethan stepped out of the car, glancing around. So, where do we start? The forest was eerily silent as Ethan and Lily ventured deeper into the woods, the faint sound of their footsteps muffled by the thick blanket of leaves. Ethan shivered, the cold night air seeping through his jacket. He glanced at Lily, who moved with unnatural grace, her eyes glowing faintly as she followed something unseen. She had said nothing since they left the campsite, her focus entirely on tracking the creature. Suddenly she stopped, her nose twitching. We're close. Ethan swallowed, his heart pounding. He couldn't see anything, but if Lily said they were close, he believed her. He followed her gaze and saw something in the distance, a figure slumped against a tree. As they approached, the figure stirred. It was a man, or at least what was left of him. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and his eyes were wild with hunger. His wrists and ankles were bound to the tree with heavy chains, and his body twitched in agony. The vampire's gaze locked onto Ethan, and in an instant he lunged. Ethan gasped as the vampire's clawed hand wrapped around his arm, pulling him toward his snarling mouth. Before Ethan could react, Lily was there. With lightning speed, she yanked Ethan from the vampire's grip, standing between them. The vampire growled, but Lily remained calm, her voice steady. Who are you? Why are you chained here? She asked, her tone cold and measured. The vampire licked his lips, his hunger momentarily forgotten. I'm from House Bathory, he said, puffing out his chest, as if the name alone was meant to impress. My companion. He already turned a few days ago. Freed himself, but now I can feel it too. I'm about to turn. Ethan's stomach twisted as the vampire's voice wavered, his desperation palpable. Help me, he begged, his voice trembling. Please, I can't become one of them. Lily's face remained impassive. Why are you here? She asked, her eyes narrowing. The vampire whimpered, glancing around frantically. We were hunting a rogue, a filthy traitor. He outsmarted us, left us to rot and turn into grotesques. I don't want to... Please. Ethan shivered, watching the vampire deteriorate before his eyes. The man's voice cracked as he begged, his words barely coherent. Lily's expression didn't change as she drew a blade from her jacket. I don't like the way you beg, she said calmly, and in one swift motion, she severed his head. Ethan gasped, stepping back, his mind struggling to process what he had just seen. You just killed him, he stammered, his voice shaky. He was begging for help. Before Lily could respond, a voice echoed from behind them, low and mocking. He was mine, you know. They both turned to see a figure standing in the shadows, watching them with a bemused expression. He stepped forward, revealing himself as a young vampire with a cocky smirk, his messy hair framing sharp features. Lily's eyes narrowed. Who are you? The vampire stopped, studying her for a moment. His smirk widened as his eyes flicked briefly to the headless body of the Bathory vampire on the ground. I could ask the same, but... He raised an eyebrow. I saw the way you handled that one. You didn't hesitate. So, I'm guessing the Bathory aren't exactly your friends? Lily stayed silent, her expression unreadable. He seemed to take her silence as confirmation, his posture relaxing as he gave a slight bow. "Name's Adrian," he said, brushing off his jacket. "You've just killed my prey. A little too merciful for my taste." His eyes flicked to Ethan and he sneered. "Why are you walking around with food, anyway?" Ethan stiffened. "I'm not food. We're friends." Adrian laughed, a deep, mocking sound. "Friends? Ah, you must be a youngling," he said, eyeing Lily, recently turned, still holding on to those silly human feelings. Lily's expression darkened. "You have no idea who you're talking to." Adrian ignored the warning in her voice and continued, clearly enjoying his little performance. "I'll tell you what. Since you've killed my prey, how about you give me your little human friend here to make up for it? I haven't fed in a while." Lily's eyes flashed dangerously, her voice low and menacing. "If you lay a finger on him, I'll kill you." Something in her voice made Adrian falter, his cocky smirk wavering. He quickly shrugged it off, raising his hands in mock surrender. All right, keep your pet. But you owe me one." Before anyone could respond, there was a rustling in the trees behind Adrian. The smell of blood had drawn something out of the darkness, a grotesque, strongly deformed and ravenous, its eyes glowing with madness. With a snarl, it lunged at Adrian, its claws aimed at his throat. Adrian barely had time to react, defending himself viciously as the grotesque attacked with a speed and strength that left Ethan frozen in fear. Adrian slashed at the creature, but it seemed relentless, its monstrous form shrugging off his blows. Lily moved instantly, joining the fight, her blade slicing through the air as she attacked the grotesque from the side. The monster snarled, flailing wildly as it fought both vampires. But it wasn't enough. They needed an edge. "Ethan!" Lily called, her voice urgent. "The flashlight!" Ethan snapped out of his shock, fumbling for his phone. With trembling hands, he turned on the flashlight and aimed it at the grotesque. The creature recoiled, screeching as the light hit its deformed face, giving Lily and Adrian the opening they needed. Together they moved in, and with a final blow they severed its head, the grotesque collapsing in a heap. Adrian straightened up, wiping blood from his mouth. He looked at Lily with a mix of surprise and grudging respect. "Not bad. For a youngling," he said with a smirk. "But if I hadn't been here, that thing would have killed you both." Lily sheathed her blade slowly, her expression unreadable. She met his gaze, a faint, almost amused smile tugging at her lips. "Maybe," she said softly, her voice calm and even. "Or maybe it would have killed you first." Adrian's smirk faltered just slightly and Lily turned to walk away. "Goodbye, Adrian." Ethan, still shaken, followed her back to the car. He glanced back once, seeing Adrian standing there watching them leave. As they drove away, Adrian's voice echoed in the distance, though Ethan couldn't make out the words. That's all for tonight. If you enjoy my bedtime stories, please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for joining me tonight.